Like, why? Why wasn't that introduced in the very beginning? Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Riley K. Jones. I'm a writer, teacher, and author tuber. And today we're going to go through my top 10 best reads in 2020, along with some of the worst reads in 2020, and maybe even of all time. Who knows? Something that I like to do personally is every single new year I like to challenge myself to read a certain set number of books. This year in 2020 I did challenge myself to read 20 books and I smashed that goal out of the park and actually read 26 books. So without much further ado, let's get into it. Here are my top 10 reads in 2020 in no particular order. The first one coming up is Hunting November. Hunting November I had reviewed earlier in this year. I really enjoyed this book, and this is the sequel to Killing November, and it was a very well plotted, very well written book. And if you like spies and a little bit of thrill and mystery and romance, that this all has it in there, and she did a great job with this book series. And I wonder if there's gonna be another one. If there is another one, I'll definitely be picking that up. The next book that I'm going to be talking about is written by one of my favorite authors, which is Ally Carter, and it is Winterborn Home for Valor and Vengeance. Now, this is actually a middle grade book, but nonetheless, I love this. This is Batman meets Annie. So she's an orphan, comes to this secret home where they are this man whose last name is Winterborn decides to adopt and raise them and kind of give them a home to live in, but there's also like this mystery wrapped up in who he is. But it's basically Batman meets Annie, and I loved this book, and I can't wait to read the sequel in 2021. The next book is another one of my favorite authors, Lori Faye Stollert's, and it is Jane Anonymous. This is a more thriller mystery type of book. So the main girl, you don't actually know her name, she just goes by Jane. And it's kind of like as if someone is writing their story anonymously, and they went through a kidnapping experience and survived, and it's one of those types of things. And I think it was really well done. I really enjoy Lori Faye Stollert's work. She wrote Blue is for Nightmare series, as well as a Deadly Little Lies, or is it the Touch series. Like there's Deadly Little, I think, games and all these little ones. But anyway, I really like her as an author, and when I found out she was releasing a new book, I was like, I have to get this, and it did not disappoint. And let me just check out this binding, this purple and yellow and the white. It's just really cool. And then I know she's coming up with a new book in 2021, so I'm excited to check that book out. The next book is actually a book series, so although it is a top 10 list of books, I'm including 3 in this one. And although I did have to read it for school, it was on my to-be-read list regardless of school, and that is the Lord of the Rings series. I liked this a lot more than I thought I would. It's not my normal cup of tea, but I understand why it's famous, why people love it. And I myself like it more than I thought I would. There's so many layers, so many depths to the characters, to the world, to the plot. Like everything is just so well done. And there's even a little bit of romance in there. It has a little bit of everything for everybody, and I just really enjoyed it. I'm glad I finally read through the Lord of the Rings series, and if you haven't, I highly recommend it. The next book on the list is another thriller, murder mystery type of thing. Surprise, surprise. And that is Karen McManus's One of Us is Next. It's a sequel to One of Us is Lying. And I liked this one more than the first one. I think for me, the first one, One of Us is Lying, is there are 4 POVs, and I'm just not a big fan of 4 POVs. Like, it just isn't my cup of tea. I did enjoy that book a lot and recommend it, but I liked this one a bit more. This one followed Bryony's, I don't know how to say her name. Ronnie's sister. So one of the original characters in the last book, it follows her sister and then two other POVs, which just to me as a reader much easier to follow and keep track of rather than four. I know that just seems kind of silly. It's like it's four. It's like you don't have that many. But anyway, in this one it is kind of playing off of the hype of the last murder where there is somebody who has created a truth or dare app, and when they start to play they have to either tell a truth or do a dare. Most people are doing dares, and the dares kind of start leading into trouble, and if you ignore the dare then what a truth of yours gets revealed to everyone. And so that happens throughout this book, and it's just so well done. Yeah, I really liked this. I did not predict the ending, but like she threaded in so well that you can go back and look through and just be like, oh my goodness, there's that clue. Oh my goodness, yes, that makes sense. Like, really liked this one more than I did the first one. Next book is no surprise because again, it is a thriller mystery and it is A Good Girl's Guide to Murder. Now, this book, I had not heard of it until about probably April, and I kind of was like, ooh, that's interesting. I wasn't sure if I was going to pull a trigger and buy it until about June. I pulled the trigger and I bought it, and I was like, this seems so interesting. We have follow along with Pip, who is an amateur sleuth, and she is using a murder in her own town. She's trying to solve this murder as a research project for school, which I thought was a very unique idea and concept and twist. When you ask people what happened to Andy Bell, they'll tell you without hesitation she was murdered by Sal Singh. No allegedly, no might have, no probably, no most likely. He did it, they say. Sal killed Andy, but I'm not just so sure. And this is what I loved about this book, is like this back cover just sucks you in, and then the rest is a joyride. And I have reviewed this book on my channel before. It is a great read. I did not predict the ending, which is always great. So when you're like, oh, I don't know who did it, but then when you look back, you're like, oh my goodness, it's all there. Those are really good books and really good reads. So if you like murder, mystery, and a little bit of romance, right up your alley. The next book that I'm going to be talking about is actually another authortuber book, and it is Alexa Dunn's Brightly Burning. I loved this book. I actually, confession, have never read Jane Eyre. I have seen all the different types of film adaptations for Jane Eyre, including a musical play. So it's something that I want to read, the original one, but this one is Jane Eyre in space, which I think, again, Alexa, if you're watching, great concept, so cool. And I loved it. It was Jane Eyre in space. Like, that's what it is. And I actually started reading this last January before the world kind of exploded, and there's some like hints of pandemic-y vibes and mentions of such things. So that was kind of interesting, of being like, oh wow, that's happening over there right now. That's not gonna come here. Oh, how wrong. Oh, how naive I was. But again, I still loved it. I think she did a wonderful job setting up the world and the characters. And I, fell in love with, is his name Mr. Rochester? No, Hugo, but his ship, I think, is the Rochester. I loved it. I think she did some cool twists that deviated from the original. So if you like romance, you like a little bit of fantasy, spacey vibes, like that one was a good one. The next one on my list, again, I'm kind of cheating a little bit, is the Percy Jackson series. I have read books 1 through 4. I really am enjoying it. I can't wait to read the 5th one and then start the next series in the Percy Jackson universe. So that, again, I am kind of upset at myself that I didn't start it sooner when it was a bit more hyped, but have heard rumors Disney Plus is gonna release a new series about Percy Jackson. So try and get them all done before that it gets released, and then I join in on the hype. The books I'm really enjoying, and my nephew is also enjoying them as well, so that's kind of cool. And I know a lot of my students also enjoy them. So great book series. You have like the hero's journey going throughout the whole series. You have quest, you have adventure, and there's even a little bit of romance, which I've always enjoyed. So if that's something that you are interested in and would like to even know more about Greek mythology, like I've learned so much more about Greek mythology reading this book series than I have read in normal everyday life and read actual stories and mythologies. Like I'm learning more through this book series. And so great book series. The next book that I'd like to talk about, I don't have a copy right now, but here is the wonderful classic, The Great Gatsby. Great Gatsby is something that I had started a couple years ago, got caught up in moving or college or something and never actually finished. And I was like, why didn't I finish this? I was loving it at the time, but then now that I finished it, I love it even more. Such a fantastic piece of literature, and it's actually not that long. So if you're like, hey, I would like to try a classic piece of literature, try The Great Gatsby. It has fabulous characters, and it commentates on capitalism and exuberant wealth and spending. It capitalizes on human nature and like society, even at that time, like that's still applicable for today. It is a classic for a reason, and although there are parts that you're just like, wow, you have to just like ask yourself, well, why did these characters do these different things, and why? What were their motivations, and why is that a negative picture, and things like that. Or it's just such a great conversation piece. If you haven't already, read The Great Gatsby. It will blow your mind. I still haven't watched the film version. I've always wanted to read the book before I watch the film, and it's been on my radar to watch it. So I have no idea if like they're similar or not, but the book was fantastic. And if you haven't already, again, I can implore you more to read it. It is fantastic. The last one on my list is actually not a fiction piece, but a non-fiction piece, and that is Save the Cat Writes a Novel. I have talked a bunch about the Save the Cat Writes a Novel and some of my other videos, and I loved this book. It's such a simple book that really helped me map out my writing and plotting better. I mean, I have talked about other writing books on this channel before, and they won't be the last time I mention writing books, but this one was definitely one that really helped me the most in 2020. Save the Cat Writes a Novel does help you plot out your novel through the beats of the novel and help you structure your novel to have that idealistic structure for your novel to keep the attention of your readers, and as well to craft a beautifully written story and to have that theme, the themes and characters all come together and all work together. If you have not read Save the Cat Writes a Novel by Jessica Brody and you are looking for writing advice and wanting more structure, I really can recommend Save the Cat Writes a Novel. All right, and now it's the moment that you've been waiting for. What were the worst books that I read in 2020? They are books that I have mentioned on my channel before, and that is To Catch a Killer and To Right the Wrong by Cheryl Scarborough. Well, I cannot say her name. The reason why they're the worst books that I read in 2020 is just, there's a lot of different things, a lot of different factors. Things that just went wrong in the series. So one thing is, like I've always mentioned before, I love the covers. However, like this cover doesn't correlate to the story at all. Like you think, oh, she's going to be running through the woods at some point in the story and it's going to happen during fall, but this happens during the spring and she doesn't run through the woods. That's a part of the publisher's thing. Again, the premise of both novels is really good. I really enjoyed and it piqued my interest, which is why I picked them up. So the premise, Erin Blake has one of those names, instantly recognizable, a name inextricably linked to a grisly crime. As a toddler, Erin survived for 3 days alongside the corpse of her murdered mother, the case which remains unsolved fascinated a nation. 14 years later, Erin has become a relatively normal teen in spite of the looming questions about her past. But then, she discovers the body of her biology teacher and once again finds herself at the center of a brutal homicide investigation. When questioned by the police, Erin tells almost the whole truth. but never voices her suspicions that her mother's killer has struck again. So, awesome premise. And the first 5 chapters were excellently written. I loved them. And then you get through the rest of the book, and it's like, however, the characters and some of the prose, as well as the plot, especially for the first one. The second one was a little bit more believable, but the plot for the first one was so predictable. Like, I predicted bam right away. Spoilers. I'm going to talk about some spoilers, so if you do not want to listen to the spoilers, you can skip ahead, and I'll put a timestamp here for when you can skip ahead. The villain in the first one, I called him right off the bat because I am an educator, and this person was also an educator. And right off the bat, in the first 4 chapters, he does something that's super sketchy that a normal educator would never do, even if they had even if I have had people that I'm like, okay, you're like the child of my best friend, but I'm not gonna go up to you as when you're a 16-year-old, of the opposite sex, and just start combing your hair and fixing your hair. That's just red flag. Super huge red flag. And to put it blatantly at the very beginning like that just did not work. If the author had put it in later, it might have been like, oh my goodness, what's gonna happen? But it was like, oh, it's him. He's sketch. He's 100% sketch. Or if he wasn't the person at all, if it wasn't that person, then it would have been like, oh, he's just sketch, and there's another reason, maybe he gets arrested for being a child molester or something, then that would make sense. You know what I mean? It did not work in that section. And then there are a lot of the characters have the same kind of tics. A lot of them are biting their fingernails. And then when the characters would talk to each other, some of the language, youthful language, seemed a bit forced. It didn't seem natural. And then one of the characters' name is Spam, and they never address her as her actual name. It took me the whole book until 90% way through the book to find out her name was Samantha. I'm sorry. I literally thought this person's name was Spam the entire time, and then about 90% of the book, you're like, oh, Samantha, and that's Spam? Why? Why wasn't that introduced in the very beginning? The guy's name was Journey. Why? That's all I have to say is why. Yeah, so that's what the names. There's this one chapter, and this is what really kills me, is when her uncle starts to help her out. There is a whole chapter that is a glorified how to do wiki article. How to do X. That's what the whole chapter was about. You could have summarized that chapter into 1, maybe 2 paragraphs, and then done that. I'm like, why do you have to waste 10 to 15 pages? That it was just basically how to do X. Step 1, step 2, step 3, and it was the 2 people talking to each other. But nothing really important happened. It was just could have just been okay, we're doing it. And let's now get to the interesting bits. And then, the cherry on top. This part is killer. Again, this is spoilers, so yeah, if you hung on this long, thanks. The way the murderer tries to get rid of people who are in his way, so Aaron, Uncle Victor, this Journey kid, and I think Spam, is he locks them in a car. I think he ties their hands together. I think that does happen. And then turns the car on, seals up everything, and is going to kill them via carbon monoxide poisoning. And the characters kind of none of them were knocked out per se. They just kind of are, aware of everything. And they're like, you're not gonna get away with this. And he's like, I already have. And then he leaves them. And it's they're like, okay, we have to get out of here. So the 2 guys start smashing smashing their heads into the windows to break the glass to get air. And it's like, the keys aren't, the car's running. The car's running, okay? So you can just click the little window thing and have it roll down. Or even better yet, you can just open the door. Like, I just don't understand. I'm like, I don't mean to just throw shade at this author. I'm just shocked that this made it through several edits. Like editors. Like, how did that make it through several edits? Like, there were so many times where the logic just did not make sense. Like, even if your hands are tied behind your back, you could, if it was like a foot thing, like one of those like rolling ones, you could definitely roll with your foot. I have done it when I was a kid. Like that's the level where I was like, I don't understand. I just don't. So then eventually, of course, because the main character has no agency whatsoever, she has to be the one to somehow, and I think her hands get tongue-tied, and she has to be the one to turn off the keys, because that's gonna save them. Just, unlocking the keys, not unlocking the doors, because you can just click or roll down the window, or there was like 15 million things you could have done. And I read back through this to see, like, am I interpreting this correctly? I was. And no, we have characters smashing their heads into glass, giving themselves concussions and, gashes and bleeding to get out of this car. And I'm just like, no, I'm sorry. But if that's your big reveal thing, I don't understand that. Now, if somebody knows if that is true, like if that actually can happen, like let me know in the comments below. Like, please be kind, because like I'm not trying to be mean to this person. I just really, it just blows my mind because it doesn't make logical sense to me. And I've talked it out to other people. I reread it 15 times. Like, I don't see how this is logical. And the second book was not that much better. Again, forcible text speak, odd villain, didn't really care as much. It was better. It was definitely better than the first one, but the first one, it was a train wreck. I'm so disappointed, really, because I thought I was gonna like it. I really, really thought I was gonna like it. I thought it was right up my alley, and then about 50 pages in, I was like, no. I did read them all, though. I did read it all. I finished it, but it just was not my cup of tea, unfortunately. That is all I have for today's video. Thank you so much for watching and sticking through all of that. Let me know down in the comments below, what were your best books that you read in 2020, or maybe what are some of the worst books that you read in 2020. And if you liked this video, please let me know by giving this video a nice big thumbs up. And if you haven't already, click subscribe. I release new videos on all things writing and reading every Thursday. Thank you guys so much for watching. Keep writing and stay creative. Bye!